Hey everybody, welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo-O. Hope you're doing well. You can always check out the archives of the devotions at my YouTube channel at Bo Willette. And it is March 19th, 2023. Wow. Yeah, we are moving by July already. Gosh, I'm going to try to brighten up my... Let's see. Oh, there we go. That's a little better. It was a little bright there. Anyway, we're going to be in Job chapter 5 today in the devotion. And again, this is my morning devos. It's time for me to get in the Word, kind of focus a little bit. And thanks for just joining me on the journey. And so the archives are at my YouTube channel, Bo Willette. Go check it out. I went on a morning ride today, so my voice is a little trashed, just I think from the wind and all that. But let's get into this. Chapter 5. Now, this is a continuation of what Eliphaz has responded to Job. And so he says, cry for help, but will anyone answer you? Now, this is to Job. Remember, Job's going through an extreme time of grief. And man, grief can get us all over the place, can it not? Right? Just as Job has had extreme grief, and what does he do? He isolates himself. He curses the day he was born, and he does so in a poetic just rant over and over, and describes how much he should have never been born. And sometimes that's how we feel when we're so filled with grief. And he says, you can cry for help, but will anyone answer you? Again, are these good things that you want to share with someone who's going through grief? Hey, is anybody going to answer you when you call out to God? And haven't you ever felt like that before, where, you cried out to God, you searched him, you thought with all your heart, but yet you didn't find anything. Jesus said, seek and you shall find. And sometimes it just doesn't feel that way, right? We have to really put aside our feelings and trust that God is with us. That just as we seek him, we certainly will find him. And if we search for him with all of our heart, really going after God. And that's something we got to trust, because sometimes our feelings are really far away from that. But I think too, it's like, man, I don't know if I want to share with someone this kind of word, right, in their grief. Hey, cry for God, cry for help, but will anybody answer you? Which of the angels will help you? Surely resentment destroys the fool and jealousy kills the simple. And isn't that so true? Resentment in your heart. Who do you resent in your heart? Why do you resent them? What is the thing going on? Is it something that they did to you? Is it something that you just can't let go? You just can't forgive? It's hard to forget, that's for sure. But we are called to forgive. And we are called to love our enemies. But resentment can get in there, and it destroys, it says, the fool. Why are you foolish? Because maybe we got to give our people over to God much more than we do. Maybe in our day we have to just say, hey, God, I give you this person. I can't control them. But Lord, I just hand them over to you. And trust the Lord's going to do a work in their heart. Because if you don't do that, then you can start building some serious resentment in that person's life, or in your heart, and that's no good. So resentment, man. That's something that just, I think of resentment, and I think of, you'll have something against someone, but you're not telling them, you're not talking to them. You just got this resentment in you. And it says, and jealousy kills the simple. Jealousy. I think of envy too, and how those things just kill us when we envy and have jealousy, All this stuff, it's all like a comparison with each other, right? We're comparing, hey, this person has more than what I have, or this person looks better than I have, or I look. And, we kind of tend to compare with one another. And it really breeds a jealousy in us instead of being really focused on God. So Eli, once again, says good stuff. I have seen that fools may be successful for the moment, but then comes sudden disaster. Hint, hint, Job, is that what's happened? Sudden disaster finally has happened. Their children are abandoned far from help. They are crushed in court with no one to defend them. They're left alone, right? It's like, I've seen this happen, he says, where, you know what? All of a sudden you're successful, but then bam, and it's because you've done something wrong. And that's the idea, right, that Eli keeps coming back to, is Job, you must have done something wrong. The hungry devour their harvest, even when it's guarded by brambles. The thirsty plant after their wealth. Meaning, the idea is that, everything you have is taken away to the fool, right? Their judgment comes, everything's taken away. And again, hint, hint, Job, this is you. It says, but evil does not spring from the soil, and trouble does not sprout from the earth. People are born for trouble as readily as sparks fly up from a fire. And isn't that true, right? People are born for trouble as readily as sparks fly up from a fire. You've seen a fire at a camp. You've seen all those sparks that go flying up in the air. That's a lot like our lives, right? Like trouble in our lives, difficulties, sinful attitudes, sinful behaviors. It's like sparks that just come up. It's like nature to us. It's so natural. The most difficult thing to do is continually, consistently, all the time resist temptation. That is the difficult thing to do. I mean, who is without sin? Which one of us is without sin and without error? None of us, right? We all need saving. We are born for trouble as readily as sparks fly up from a fire. That is true. If I were you, I would go to God and present my case to him. He does great things too marvelous to understand. So true, Eliphaz. That's exactly right. God does things too marvelous to understand, like his grace. Go to God. Throw yourself on God, Job. He does great things. He's marvelous. He's gracious, slow to anger, rich in love, as the Bible says. And sometimes that's how we encourage people, right? Hey, just throw yourselves on the Lord. Perhaps, man, he'll be gracious to you too. That kind of idea. And he says he gives rain for the earth and water for the fields. He gives prosperity to the poor and protects those who suffer. He frustrates the plans of the schemes of the work of their hand, and their hands will not succeed. He traps the wise in their own cleverness, so their cunning schemes are thwarted. They find it is dark in the daytime, and they grope at noon as if it were night. He rescues the poor from... So he basically takes... The enemies of God are thwarted. They are moved aside. They are, in a sense, confused. Those enemies of God are, they're not on solid ground. That's what he's talking about. He says, but he rescues the poor from the cutting words of the strong and rescues them from the clutches of the powerful. And so at last the poor have hope, and the snapping jaws of the wicked are shut. But consider the joy of those corrected by God. Do not despise the discipline of the Almighty when you sin. So true, right? God's got a discipline for us, and that is, man, his heavy hand sometimes is upon us big time. And that's okay. We need that. That is a part of his grace. It's just the correcting work of the Lord. And this is a New Testament idea, certainly so. It's repeated in the New Testament, but we see it here in the book of Job, right? Don't despise the discipline of the Lord, right? When you sin. Help me not to do that, Lord. Help me take your correction. And, you might be out there and you might need correction as well. You might see things in your life that, the Lord needs to correct you on. But, it's no fun to be corrected. We get embarrassed and all these other emotions come in us. We don't want people to know. We don't want this. We don't want that. It's so tough. I mean, man, some of my sins I've had to, I've had to, kind of share those things, and those have been embarrassing, to share some of my difficulties in the trials. They're not easy to share, and they can be quite difficult. But we know that God's got something in it all, and that's what Eliphaz says. So this Eliphaz, what he says is not everything's wrong. It's just like I say, sometimes those contexts are wrong. Sometimes we're just not sharing it at the right time, right? And here Job's down and out, and Eli, that's what I've called him for short, is kind of giving him all this, doctrine and theology and, all this stuff like that. Hey, God disciplines those he loves, Job. Hey, remember that. For though he wounds, he also bandages. He strikes, but his hand also heals. Talking about the Lord, right? He wounds, but he also bandages. He strikes, but he also heals. He's a loving Father. From 6 disasters he will rescue you. Even from the 7th he will keep you from evil. He will save you from death in time of famine, from the power of the sword in time of war. You will be safe from slander and have no fear when destruction comes. You will laugh at destruction and famine. Wild animals will not terrify you. Sounds like if God's on your side, then, man, you don't got much to worry about. It says you will be at peace with the stones in of the field, and its wild animals will be at peace with you. You will know that your home is safe. When you survey your possessions, nothing will be missing. You will have many children. Your descendants will be as plentiful as grass. You will go to the grave at a ripe old age, like a sheaf of grain harvested at the proper time. We have studied life and found all this to be true. Listen to my counsel and apply it to yourself. So Eliphaz says, hey, listen to my counsel, man. We know how the Lord is. I mean, God, if you love the Lord, you're going to live long and prosper, kind of thing, right? But yet Job has had everything taken from him. And so, is it because Job did the wrong thing? Is it because he wasn't with God? That he did not heed some kind of correction of God in his life? That all the calamity has happened? This is what Eliphaz seems to be hinting at, right? But yet, we're going to find out later on down the road that it was wrong. That Eliphaz was wrong. Job did not sin. Man, wild, right? It's not that what he says is wrong, per se, but it's just not the right time, not the right place. And again, we need discernment, for sure. But you go through these kind of proverbial, poetic literatures that's being written, and it all sounds pretty good. It sounds a lot like the Proverbs, when you read the Proverbs of the Bible. A lot of good wisdom there, right? God's on your side. You're going to laugh in the face of, the lion or whatever it is that's coming to get you, because you got God on your side. He's going to save you from death. He's going to take care of you. It's like, hey, and if God does something, he's going to fix it. He's going to do, all this stuff like that. So, we see all these wonderful principles, but when we start thinking that this is kind of a universal kind of truth, meaning, God will prosper everybody who trusts in him, prospering in a financial way, in a long life kind of way, then we start running into problems, right? Job did trust God, but Job also had the calamity. But we see a backstory. There's another thing going on. And that Eliphaz just doesn't know that. And so he's saying, oh, something happened to Job. It must be that, something's not right. He's not in the right with God. So, we want to take what is being said and we want to look at it and go, man, there's some good principles there for my just daily life. Consider the joy of those corrected by God. That God does have a correction for us when we sin, and that's okay, and we have to look at it that way. That God is trying to deal with us and help us to walk more holy with Him, and that is a lifelong journey for sure. So we want to take those lessons that we read in the Scripture and go, yeah, God, help me with these things. But we always want to be able to just take it in ourselves, like work on ourselves. It's hard for me to work on other people because, man, I got enough stuff myself, right? And so sometimes we just have to, work on ourselves, work on what God's working on us with, get our eyes off other things and other people at the moment. And, you're finding your day, and I find in my day that if I work on myself, boy, I don't have much time to be judging everybody else, that's for sure. So maybe Eliphaz needed to look at his own life and look at his own heart before the Lord. And kind of, instead of so much say all this to Job, maybe he needed to say it all to him, instead. So, just a thought. So Job chapter 5, very cool section for sure. And we're going to get Job's second speech, his response to Eli tomorrow. So you guys take care. Have a great morning, okay? Bye-bye.